Back in 1978, Meryl Streep, then a young actress, was on a trajectory to become the greatest actress of her generation. But unbeknown to her, she was also about to lose the love of her life. But just before we get to that, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And please leave a comment at the end of the video and share your thoughts. Meryl Streep hasn't talked about it much over the years, but 1978 was to be a year in her life that was going to be terribly eventful and very dramatic. 1978 had a very significant influence on how Meryl Streep developed as a person and an actress. 29-year-old Meryl Streep was then a young and unexperienced actress in the New York theater scene. She and her partner, actor John Cazale, shared an apartment on Franklin Street. He was by then a legend among his peers, and at 43 years of age, he was 14 years older than she was. Streep and Cazale had first met in 1976, after having been cast opposite each other in Measure for Measure in Central Park. Cazale wasn't exactly a star by that point. He lacked that fleeting quality, but he was nonetheless seen as a rare talent by the best filmmakers of the day. By then, Cazale had starred in Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation, 1974, and Sidney Lumet's Dog Day Afternoon, 1975, and he had played the iconic Fredo in The Godfather, 1972, and The Godfather Part 2, 1974. John Cazale appeared in films with some of the greatest actors of the day, including Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Gene Hackman, and Marlon Brando. Al Pacino once said, "I learned more about acting from John than anybody. All I wanted to do was work with John for the rest of my life. He was my acting partner." In John Cazale's short acting career, he appeared in only 5 films: The Conversation, The Godfather, The Godfather Part 2, Dog Day Afternoon, The Deer Hunter. Yet every one of the 5 films that he appeared in was nominated for Best Picture. And 3 of the 5 would take home that coveted Best Picture Academy Award. Between John Cazale and Meryl Streep, Cazale was then the more well-known of the two, but they were both still struggling artists and both still in their early days. Cazale would often take Streep to dinner in New York's Little Italy, where the restaurant owners would often insist that dinner was on them, because they were just happy to have Fredo eating in their restaurant. He would always totally immerse himself into the characters he played, and because he wanted to get deep into his characters, he always wanted to know more about their backstory. And for that reason, he was known by film directors as 20 Questions. Al Pacino once said that a simple dinner with John Cazale would become epic. I mean, you'd be done, washed, finished, and in bed, before he got halfway through his meal. Then the cigar would come out. He'd look at it, light it, taste it, then finally smoke it. John Cazale and Meryl Streep were becoming the envy of the New York theater community. She was the most naturally gifted actress in decades, and he was the most naturally brilliant actor. But everything changed one day in May of 1977. Cazale was unwell enough to miss performances in Agamemnon when the show was previewing Uptown. Director Joe Papp was worried enough to arrange an urgent appointment for Cazale to see his own physician in the Upper East Side. Within a few days, Joe Papp and his wife Gail were seated in the doctor's waiting room with Meryl Streep and John Cazale. The news was not good. Cazale was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, and it had spread to every part of his body. While waiting in the waiting room for Cazale's radiation treatment, Al Pacino hoped that things wouldn't be as terrible as they seemed, and Cazale insisted that things would improve, that he would get better. And when he insisted on returning to work, Meryl Streep took a role that she detested, just so she could be by his side. According to Meryl Streep, she was simply the girl in the film, which was basically a man's view of a woman, someone who is always vulnerable, very quiet, and incredibly passive. She was, in essence, everything that Meryl Streep was not. The film was The Deer Hunter, and Cazale had the opportunity to star alongside Robert De Niro. The Deer Hunter was one of the few movies at the time to deal with the Vietnam War. The production company, EMI, insisted that Cazale had to be sacked because the risks were too high, because no one wanted to finance a movie with a star who was terminally ill. But the filmmakers fought to keep him on. Meryl Streep would later say that she suspected that Robert De Niro paid for John Cazale's insurance premiums out of his own pocket. Robert De Niro has never confirmed it or denied it. He would later simply remark, "He was sicker than we thought, but I wanted him to be in it." In early March 1978, 9 months before the New York and Los Angeles premiere of The Deer Hunter, John Cazale was admitted to the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Meryl Streep never left his side. On March 12, 1978, at 3 a.m., Cazale's doctor told Meryl Streep, "He's gone." Meryl Streep was not ready to hear it, and she was even less ready to accept it. According to some accounts, what transpired next represented the fulfillment of every steadfast dream that Meryl had maintained throughout the previous 10 months that she had cared for him. John opened his eyes for a brief, unsettling moment, as she pounded on his chest while sobbing. "It's all right, Meryl," he said weakly. "It's all right." Then he closed his eyes and died.